there. Last time we discussed teamwork and sales floor situational awareness, and folks, I hope you really discussed it. I hope you really made some good solid changes to your floor teamwork. Again, I'm not promoting hovering or sidling or being annoying. I'm just talking about being on the radar if needed. Now, this week was kind of neat. I sat in on a podium-sponsored webinar with Will Guidara, author of the book Unreasonable Hospitality and prior owner of 11 Madison Park in New York City, which was voted the finest restaurant in the world. But they weren't just voted that solely on their food. They were voted that, for the first time ever, the voting committee considered hospitality, and they took that into account. They treated their guests with unreasonable hospitality. I highly recommend the book, and when I receive my workbook in a few months, I can't wait, we're going to have a great series on it right here on the platform, so look forward to that. So why am I so big on this hospitality angle? Here's why, and it's a really, really big why. I'm able to see this from a cloud view here, a 10,000-foot view. And I'm seeing this with the stores that we work with one-on-ones, and I'm seeing this with just all the stores that we talk to. We're beginning to see a shift in jewelry purchases. And if you notice this last Christmas of 2025, many stores saw lower transaction count, seeing fewer customers, and more sales in the $500 and below range. They also saw much fewer sales in the $500 to $1,500 range, that mid-range, right? And then pretty strong sales in the $1,500 and above price range. Well, long story short on this, the rich are going to always buy jewelry, and they're always going to be spending their money on jewelry and things that they want. But the not as rich, the middle class folks, those kind of sweet spot folks for jewelry stores, $500 to $1,500 range, even $2,000, $2,500 range, they're not spending as much, right? Because their grocery store bills, their gas bills, their electricity bills, utilities and things like that, they've all gone up. So their discretionary spending is going down. So in the short run, what's going to happen with jewelers that are not on this platform and not having these discussions or talking about this, they're going to be reacting. They're going to be making moves that involve inventory and pricing and marketing and driving themselves crazy. And yes, there are some things you can do with that, and we can help you with that. But the jewelers and the salespeople that are going to come out smiling in the end, years from now, of course, will be those that make people feel wonderful about being in your store. So what makes your store special? Okay? If you're hanging on to a fancy showroom, fancy cases filled with so many options, too many options, your great location, your quality of jewelry, the knowledge of your sales staff, folks, you're going to be sorry. Because every one of these things is so easily replicated by anyone with a checkbook. Just think about that. But what a person with a checkbook cannot duplicate and will never be able to replicate is you connecting with your customer, listening, reacting, being fully present, and being memorable. Now in this webinar, I had asked the question, it was about jewelers and how they can become more relevant to today's jewelry buyer. And Will told the story about buying his wife's engagement ring. He said he remembers the store and walking into it, but for the life of him, he could not remember a thing about the interaction. Will Guidara, owner of 11 Madison Park in New York City, the finest restaurant in the world, he was probably spending tens of thousands of dollars on that engagement ring. And the experience was forgettable. I mean this with all my heart. My biggest fear for every one of you watching this is that you become complacent or are complacent with where we're at, and forgettable. I don't want you to become complacent and forgettable. How truly sad it is when somebody comes into a store at a momentous time in their lives only to forget about it a few years later. He said, "Why haven't I gotten a call at least once a year to come in and get a complimentary cleaning or a checkup? Why didn't that salesperson ask me about my future wife, how we met, what our tastes are, what our styles are?" You know, now, of course, this was a podium sponsored webinar, so he was saying that the biggest failure that we often make is not getting customer information, not getting that data that is so important. And I say data, I really don't like the word because data sounds like it goes in a computer. That's good and that's all important here. But the information you need to be getting is heart information. The information for the heart, okay? Listen, once the customers, they like you, they know you, now they trust you. And with that trust comes the expectation that you're going to take care of them. You're going to call them or text them or follow up with them when they need to know about something. In fact, I'm going to go off the deep end here with a little squirrel hole, rabbit hole, okay, what do they call that? And say that if I had a store today, which I don't have a store today, I would take my entire marketing budget and put it solely on wowing customers with unreasonable hospitality. I mean that with all my heart. If I had $50,000 in a marketing budget, I would put it all into that. But we're going to tell you more about that later because that'll come with the unreasonable hospitality plan. And of course, those of you that have one-on-ones with us, we're going to walk you through that and hold your hand, and it's going to be amazing. But I want to wrap up today because I'm talking about up here, our thinking. We can no longer be thinking of transactional transactions in our store and getting by with that. We have to be more than that. Here's a story about Chewy.com. Okay, Will had a dog, and I can't remember the dog's name, but he loved this dog dearly. And as often happens, always happens, is that puppy passed away. And not only did it take weeks for the family to heal and to grieve, but Will had to go through all of the arrangements and cancel the subscription to Chewy.com, which was their food and medication subscription. So when he called this national company, he got a very sympathetic woman on the other end, and she said she was so sorry about the dog's passing, and that she would gladly credit his account for his last order, his entire last order. There might have been the bag might have been gone. She credited his account for the last order, but that's nothing because a week later, a bouquet of flowers showed up at Will Gadara's home. And and it was just a sympathy bouquet, and it wasn't because he was famous. It was because he was a good, loyal client of Chewy.com. By the way, on the phone call, they said, we're going to credit your account, but would you do us a favor? Would you please bring that remaining food down to a local animal shelter? And we really would appreciate it if you would do that. So there's a great connection there. So I'll tell you what, that was very, very meaningful. And again, he didn't receive it because he was a big famous person. He received it because he was a client and he was important to Chewy.com. Did Will ever order from Chewy.com again when his family got a new dog? You darn betcha he did. Of course, he said it would take a whole lot of love from somebody else and probably a lot of arm twisting to get him to take his business anywhere else. So next time, I promise, we're going to start talking about showing jewelry and the details and the conversations and all of those very important things. But these first two trainings, I need you thinking at a much higher level than just the transactional level of a ring purchase. Okay? This conversation is really about you being happy in the store and being happy with your profession. And it's about creating raving fans that are happy and they love you as well. And those raving fans will come for life. This is so important because once we've got this figured out, the transaction is a piece of cake. Okay? The transaction can happen anywhere. It's not even we probably don't even remember it. It's everything else. So I promise you the transaction is a piece of cake. That's why I'm not taking you through a step by step with bullet points and check boxes for you to memorize. It doesn't work like that. And you can't memorize that all anyway. And as soon as you start memorizing stuff, it becomes cliche and just a spiel, and people hate that. So that does not work anymore. So here's just a few questions to get you going. Will they remember tomorrow with delight, their visit with us today? What are the odds they went to another store to shop or buy? Did they express genuine delight or emotion when they were here in the store? Will I ever see them again? If they come in next time, will I remember one significant thing about their visit to ask them about? I like this one. Maybe we close with this one. If they wrote a Google review about their visit, what would they say? Folks, this has everything to do with bridal because bridal purchases are 90% or more new people that have never been in our doors before. So how are we making them feel? Next time, we're gonna get behind the cases.